All right, everybody. Good evening and welcome to the Boise City Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing. A few things to start out with for tonight's proceedings. Everyone from the public entering the hearing virtually has been automatically muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you'll be called upon and unmuted, excuse me. There is a chat function in Zoom. However, this is not part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arise. Our procedures for public hearing begin with a presentation from the planning team. Then we'll go to the applicant and then the representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association, then followed by questions from the commission. After that, we proceed to public testimony, starting with those who are in person, then who signed up on the sign-up sheet in advance, and then anyone else who raises their hand virtually. If you are attending through your telephone, you can type in *9 to raise your hand. Each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. We are strict with this time as it is limited in code. Finally, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate and render a decision. Mr. Chair, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Crystal. Good evening, everyone. We are citizen volunteers appointed by the mayor and approved by City Council. We make final decisions on conditional use permits, variances and appeals, and recommendations to the City Council on subdivisions, rezones, annexations, and code or comprehensive plan amendments. Any decision made tonight may be appealed to the City Council, provided that the appeal is filed within 10 days of this hearing. In order to file an appeal, you must have given written or oral testimony at tonight's meeting. That's why it's important when you give your name and address when you testify tonight. We utilize a consent agenda. This means that if the applicant agrees with the staff report and if there is no public opposition, the item will be placed on the consent agenda. All items that are placed on the consent agenda are approved with one motion without further public comment. For items not on the consent agenda, we will hold a full public hearing in the order just detailed a few minutes ago with staff, applicant, neighborhood association presentations, and then public testimony. Excuse me. Thank you all for attending. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Schaefer,
Yes.
Danley,
Here.
Gillespie, Moore, Mooney,
Here.
Seha,
Here.
Torres,
Here.
Doan,
Here.
6 present, 2 absent.
Okay, thank you, Christina. Okay, short agenda this evening. We do have a few items eligible for the consent agenda, so we'll start there. First, without objection, I'll place our work session meeting minutes from April 1st on the consent agenda, as well as our commission meeting minutes from April 1st on the consent agenda. And then likewise, I'd like to place our work session meeting minutes from April 8th on the consent agenda, and then also our commission meeting minutes from April 8th on consent. And then looking at new business, up first for consideration for the consent agenda is item number 2. This is PUD 23-30, Marks Land Surveying LLC at 9523 West Sunflower Lane. This is a conditional use permit for a residential planned development comprised of 2 single-family units on 0.27 acres in an R1C zone. There's also a parking reduction included in this application. And then associated with this application is SUB 23-38 Dengler subdivision at that same address, 9523 West Sunflower Lane, a preliminary and final plat for said residential subdivision. And is the applicant present tonight? Great. And are you in agreement with the staff report on these 2 items? Very good. Let the record show that the applicant is present and in agreement with the staff report on both items. And is there anyone attending this evening hoping to testify in opposition to these items? Okay, very good. We'll go ahead and place item number 2 on the consent agenda. And then one more item for consent consideration is item number 3. This is CVA 2315 and CUP 2344 Denise Sweep at 214 West Circleway Drive. This is a variance to encroach the rear and street side setbacks on 0.28 acres in R1B zone and then a conditional use permit for an accessory structure in front of a primary structure at the same address. And are you in agreement with the staff report? Very good. Let the record show the applicant is present and in agreement with the staff report. Is there anyone attending tonight hoping to testify in opposition to either of these items? Very good. We'll go ahead and place item number 3 on the consent agenda. And at this point, I will entertain a motion regarding consent.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Danley.
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda consisting of the following items: the P and Z Commission meeting, work session meetings from April 1st, the meeting minutes from April 1st, the work session minutes from April 8th, the meeting minutes from April 8th. Item number 2, PUD 23-30 located at 9523 West Sunflower Lane. That's right, a conditional use permit for residential plan development, as well as SUB 23-38 located at the same address. And item number 3, CVA 23-15 and CUP 23-44, located at 214 West Circle Way Drive, a variance to encroach on the rear and street side setbacks, both with their respective terms and conditions in their staff reports.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner Danley. Do you have a second on consent?
Second.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Torres. Any further discussion? Okay. Will the clerk please call the roll regarding consent?
Schaefer,
Yes.
Danley,
Yep.
Mooney,
Yes.
Seha,
Yes.
Torres,
Yes.
Doan,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay. Great. Thank you, guys. Good luck with your projects. All right. We have 2 more items to hear this evening. We'll start at the top of the list. Item number 1, CUP 23-56, 4G Development and Consulting at 7802 West Spectrum Avenue and 1700 South Entertainment Avenue. This is a conditional use permit for a drive-up establishment associated with a restaurant on 2.86 acres in a C2D zone. Just to note that this is being heard underneath the legacy code. And we're going to hear from staff first, Sabrina Mortensen. Hi, Sabrina.
Hi. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. The item before you is a request for a conditional use permit for a drive-up establishment associated with a restaurant on 2.86 acres located at 7802 West Spectrum Street and 1700 South Entertainment Avenue in a C2D zone. The subject property is comprised of 2 parcels within the Boise Spectrum Community Activity Center located near the intersection of Cole and Overland Roads. The Activity Center contains a mix of restaurant, entertainment, hotel, and commercial uses. Transit services, bikeways, and pathways in the vicinity are shown on this slide. The site contains 2 existing restaurant buildings, which are currently both vacant. The applicant proposes to demolish both existing structures and construct 1 new restaurant with a drive-through. The proposed restaurant use is allowed by right in the C2 zone. However, a CUP is required for the associated drive-through. The planning team finds that the proposed use is compatible with the existing mix of uses in the surrounding area, which includes a mix of residential, restaurant, retail, office, hotel, and entertainment uses. As shown on this slide, there are other existing drive-up establishments in the area, including a restaurant with a drive-through on the adjacent parcel to the north. The comprehensive plan encourages existing activity centers to be revitalized and to incorporate a broader mix of uses over time. Although the project will replace 2 existing restaurants with 1 restaurant with a drive-through, the site design proposed by the applicant preserves the ability for the southern portion of the site to be redeveloped in the future, as encouraged by the comprehensive plan. In addition to the CUP approval criteria, drive-through establishments are also required to comply with these specific standards. As detailed in your packets, the planning team finds the proposal to be in general compliance with these standards. The subject property is located adjacent to 2 collector roadways, and the proposed drive-up aisles are designed to accommodate queuing of approximately 34 vehicles, which is anticipated to be sufficient to accommodate peak volumes. Therefore, the use is not anticipated to generate additional commercial traffic through the nearby residential neighborhoods to the west, or to cause queuing issues that would impact other uses in the activity center. Code dictates that drive-up aisles should be located behind the building, and circulation should provide for pedestrian access to and from the establishment's entrance. The site design proposed by the applicant accommodates pedestrian circulation as shown on this slide. However, a portion of the drive-up aisles is proposed to run adjacent to Entertainment Avenue to the side of the building. As detailed in your packets, other design alternatives which would have located the entire drive aisles away from the street were explored, but were found to be infeasible. In order to mitigate the visual and noise impacts of the portion of the drive-up aisles located adjacent to Entertainment Avenue, the applicant proposes to provide screening consisting of enhanced landscape plantings and a retaining wall in this location, as detailed in your packets and shown on this slide. As detailed in your packets, late correspondence was received from the applicant. The correspondence included a current count of existing parking within the Boise Spectrum development, demonstrating the proposed number of on-site parking spaces is necessary to support the overall parking requirement for the Boise Spectrum development. The applicant also requested that condition of approval number 4 be modified to allow either a parcel consolidation or a property line adjustment to be completed prior to the issuance of building permits. In conclusion, the planning team recommends approval with a modification to condition number 4, and I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sabrina. Next, we'll hear from the applicant. Excuse me. You can start with your name and address, please. And typically we do 10 minutes. Is that going to be adequate
No
for you guys?
problem.
Okay.
No
go.
problem. Mr. Chair, Commissioners, my name is Andrew Hunt. My address is 7816 East Victory Road, Nampa, Idaho, 83687. Good evening. Good to meet you. This has been a very good process to go through with the city. They've been great to work with. It's been something we've been working on for a little while now, working with the pre-app staff, going through several iterations, as Sabrina mentioned, with this site plan. So I think what we want to do with our time this evening is just take about 5 minutes and go through a very brief introduction of our project. I think she's covered it well in the staff report. Again, the conditions of approval are things we agree with. There was one modification we added, clarifying language for that lot consolidation. So I'm ready. I don't know if I can control it.
Yeah, there's
Oh,
a
this one
clicker.
here.
Yeah, right there.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. 2 plans I just want to take a look at real quick is the landscape plan and then the site plan real briefly. The landscape plan shows some enhanced landscaping along the right-of-way, Entertainment and Spectrum Street, provides a buffer, much larger buffer than what's there now, as well as kind of 2 segregated areas. One would be focused on the drive-through and the other as an area of parking buffer, landscaping, walkability, pedestrian access. I think Sabrina did a great job highlighting on her plan all those a little bit quicker. The bike area, the bike pack area, bike parking areas, as well as the pedestrian walkways throughout the site. So I just wanted to highlight that as we have the slide up. And then a couple other bullets we have here are addition of several Class 2, Class 3 trees, and new landscape and hardscape plaza element in the southeast corner of the site. And then site plan, really just wanted to touch on 3 pieces right here, the parking, the access, and then the circulation and stack. The parking is something, again, that was a condition of approval. I'll read it right here. A minimum of 34 parking stalls shall be provided on site. Any additional parking proposed on the subject property shall not cause the total number of parking spaces within the Boise Spectrum developed to exceed the minimum amount required by CUP 97 -0049 in the existing shared parking agreement. We did our math and measure and counted all the stalls, and we're in full compliance, short of that number by about 71 stalls. So that was something we wanted to bring attention to. Access-wise, this is part of where staff really came and worked with us really well, where we wanted to provide a very safe, and because this is almost 3 acres, it's really important to focus on how do you have pedestrian access with a drive-through? How do you attract pedestrians in this area? And so one of the things we wanted to highlight on this slide was the pedestrian accesses from the southwest corner, that plaza element going through the site, accessing the building directly from Entertainment on the west side, and then being able to access it as part of this overall activity center from the east or the north. So being able to access on all 4 sides. Circulation and stack, again, Sabrina mentioned it very well, but over 30 car stack here using that kind of newer concept you may have seen with some of the Chick-fil-A's in the valley. For example, Nampa, that's that double drive-through lane. So really no concern with if it were to overstack or what would traffic look like. That's a common question we get. And what Chick-fil-A is planning to do is continuing to improve their process, double lanes, using a door. A question we get sometimes is, how do you access the second lane? That's accessed via a door. If you stop by the new or the Meridian store at the mall, you'll see that door in use. It's how employees get from the inside of the building, walk out, deliver the food to the customers, and then they go off on their way. And there's always someone directing traffic so that there are not confusions or accidents. So those are the main things I wanted to highlight for landscaping and site plan related. We stand for questions and we're available if you have any.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Appreciate that. We'll check in first to see if we have anyone from the neighborhood association, which I don't believe that we do. Okay. All right. So we will go ahead and move right into questions then to either staff or the applicant. Commissioner Danley, would you like to start?
I'd love to start.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, I have several questions, as you would imagine, and
Mhm.
they're going to be for both the applicant as well as for Sabrina, our staff. We are here tonight because of a CUP, a conditional use permit specifically for the drive-through. We are not here for the restaurant portion of this application. It's just the drive-through. So my questions are rooted only in really the drive-through element, since that's what we are weighing on a decision. As a CUP, you get to go to the bonus round, right? And there's additional requirements that need to be met in order to satisfy the conditions for mitigation and determination, compliance, and so forth, in order for the CUP to be satisfied. I want to focus on two areas. One is adverse effects for adjacent properties, and the other one is compliance with our comprehensive plan. If I can, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to start with the effects on adjacent property. And I just want to make sure I understand something, get some information straight first and foremost. As it stands, there are two structures on this site. That's right?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, that's correct.
Okay. In our staff report, it made it sound as though the one that is in operation was going to continue into operation for a period of time. But according to what I heard this evening, is that business no longer operational? I think it was Mr. Hunt, you had mentioned that that business is now closed. I don't remember who said it.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, we have the landlord here is able to speak if there's specific questions, but I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that it's currently being rented on a month-to-month basis, and
Okay.
it will not be operated under this new proposal.
So that business will be going away because of this application. Is that correct? Is that fair to say? Is that a fair way of asking? That business will close because the structure will be demolished in order to accommodate the new site, the new development.
Yes, this proposal includes a new restaurant,
Right.
replacing both of those.
Okay.
Correct, Commissioner.
Your square footage is about, I've seen two different numbers in the staff report. One was below 6,000, one was just above 6,000. Roughly, your business is about 6,000 square feet, right? Do we have any idea what the cumulative square footage of the two sites that are to be demolished are? 15, so 2.5 or something. So, okay. I want to talk about, let's go to the drive-through and specifically decibels. I see that the nearest adjacent property, residential property in our staff report is 280 feet away. Is that correct? Can you confirm that?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, yes, that's correct.
Your drive-through is 450 feet. Is that correct? That's what the staff report says.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, in length or
In
distance
length.
away from a building?
In length.
Approximately, yes, sir.
Okay, so your drive-through that you're asking for is about half again larger than the distance from this site to the nearest structure. I would like to know how many vehicles does your market study suggest are going to be serviced by this drive-through on a daily basis?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, We did run a preliminary study with our traffic engineers, taking a look at some of the Treasure Valley and the surrounding sites as a comparison. And at peak volume times, we see no more than 30, 32 cars. We also extrapolated some recent data from California stores where they might be a little bit more busy because that data is a little bit easier to use in conjunction with data we just took about 2.5 months ago for a separate hearing. And that also showed 30, 32 cars. And so this will accommodate 34 or more cars. 34 cars in the drive-through lane. We do have the ability, if needed, and if more cars do come, I don't know if you have a chance to see the site plan. I'm not sure how to pull it up, but it can stack into that drive-through lane up to the north. And that's sometimes when they have those peak opening periods, they plan ahead with the local sheriff's department and such with traffic cones and things you may have seen so that the excess cars can be taken care of. But 34 cars is in this drive-through lane, which is expected more than the peak at lunch times on Saturdays.
So respectfully, that's not what I asked. What I asked is how many cars a day is this site going to serve? So you're telling me the peak hour or peak term, and you're also now suggesting that 34 stalls might not cut it and that we could end up exceeding into the north. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, I apologize for my miscommunication. No, I don't want to insinuate anything. When we took our studies very recently, it was that 32 cars was the max that they saw at one of the busiest restaurants
Okay.
in the Treasure Valley, but also in the Northwest, and that was the Meridian store.
Okay.
So our drive-through does accommodate for what we expect to be the max peak. But I was just trying to explain
Okay.
that it could accommodate more if this store sees more. As far as the daily counts, we do have Chick-fil-A. Would you like to add specifically related to the daily counts? It's a little bit tough because this is a different store. It's a lot bigger of a site. It's obviously hard to predict the daily counts, and that's usually a number that I don't personally have access to, and it's hard to record just because as a consultant, I don't have those numbers. But I think Chick-fil-A may be able to shed some light a little bit on those daily counts.
Yeah, that would be great.
Just
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
maybe we can
while
while
that's
she's doing
being
that up, maybe we can
computed-
move on to.
Yeah, that's fine.
Go.
Take a break. Jack, go for it.
I have a question regarding the estimates. You said that the vehicle estimates were based on other stores in the Treasure Valley as well as California. Are they the same design in terms of 2-lane drive-throughs?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, no, they are different designs. They operate the same way in the sense that they are a fast food restaurant. They're a Chick-fil-A fast food restaurant. They serve the same food in the same general area. For example, the Treasure Valley store, the Meridian, the Nampa, and the Boise store that's nearby. So they do things the same way, but the count of cars is the same. So whether you can stack 32 cars in a row or stack 32 cars in 2 lanes and 16 in each, that was how they do it. So for example, the Meridian store has 2 lanes that they stack outside of their drive-through lane because it overflows sometimes. Then it goes back down to 1 lane when you get through and order your food. They're still counting the same number of cars. It's still 30 to 31 cars at peak. So does that provide some context?
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman. Yeah, more, Chris, yeah. Nope.
Oh, you got a
Got
number. Great.
Numbers.
Sabrina Wright, 2220 San Diego, California. In regards, and these are on average, some of the peak times you're going to hear numbers come through. Again, this is a new site, so we don't have any specific data on what is anticipated, but this is the average of what we're seeing in the surrounding area with our Chick-fil-A's peak weekday average. In the morning, you're going to see about a 7-car queue. At peak hour at midday during the week, which is lunchtime hours from 11 to 2, you're going to be looking at about 28 vehicles, and that's on the higher side. During the weekend peak power, which is the afternoon, evening from 4 to 6, we're looking at about 22 cars. And then on Saturday midday, which will be the highest in volume from 10:30 to 2, will be about 29 vehicles.
Okay, so that still gets that's better, but that still doesn't tell us how many vehicles per day you're expecting because we have residents who live adjacent to this. And so I'm trying to understand how many vehicles in a given day are they going to hear go through that drive-through? So you're telling me sort of peak hours with the drive-through specifically. I'm going to take that for now and just run with it because it sounds like we don't have any kind of a 24 hours of operation type of number. So my questions are in this vein are going to relate to two specific subjects. With regard to noise, we have a decibel that comes out of any sort of speaker system, right? Have you ever done an analysis of what the cumulative audible effects are of upwards of 32 vehicles in a queue of a drive-through are? What does that sound like?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, if we have done a study on audible analysis, it hasn't been a recent one in this area, or even, for example, in a nearby area, or even in California. Those are very seldom, but it is something, if it was something that commission required, we could do. I can say that specifically related to sound and sound emittance and relating to code and abiding by that, understanding there is a residential, we intend by every means to comply with all the rest of the uses around us and make sure that we're cognizant and respecting the rules and obligations that any use would have, specifically related to the speaker phones. And I also do want to point out that if this, I'm sorry, I can't tell what screen you're looking at. I think it's different than mine. But as far as the site plan goes, the speakers are not located adjacent to or next to. They're really hard to see, but they're on the south end of the drive-through, pointed north and south rather than west, which is where that residential is facing. So the emittance of the sound is really either facing the building or it's facing that large parking landscaping area. So.
Okay. If I can continue.
Yeah, sure. Go
Okay,
ahead.
I'm apologize, but I got a lot.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. That's good. That's fine. Yep.
Okay, on the same note with respect to the queuing, has Chick-fil-A ever done an air quality analysis of the emissions and general, pollution and pollutants that are generated from having a stacking of 30 to 32 vehicles, which is, again, this is what you're asking for. So has there been an analysis of that? Again, with regard to the presumption here of adverse effects to neighboring property. That's where I'm going with that.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, we have done those studies. Again, they are more seldom. They're usually greenhouse gas or related studies. They're very extensive and they're not something we're opposed to doing, but it is not something we have let out with or anything that we felt was required given the location, proximity, size. So hopefully that answers your question. Yes, it has been something we have done.
Okay. If I have one more in this and then if there's other questions. Okay.
Yeah.
Sabrina, a couple of hearings ago, we had a major application in South Boise. And as part of that application, we had a property tax analysis that was done as part of our application that showed what the long-term fiscal ramifications would be. You recall it. We have two existing buildings here that are subject of property tax. They're going to go away, and there's going to be in its replacement a smaller building and a bulk of the site dedicated toward either parking or the drive-through. Has there been an analysis of any sort on property tax implications of this decision?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, no, there is not.
Okay.
Right. You good for now, Chris?
Yeah, I have questions on the comprehensive plan, but if there's other questions.
Sure. Let me check in with the others here. Any other questions from any other commissioners at the moment? Okay. Chris, go ahead. Fire away.
Okay, so that generally is again kind of in that avenue of adverse effects to neighboring. I want to get into the comprehensive plan. This is a designated activity center. That is a very different portion of our comprehensive plan than general commercial. So Sabrina, I want to make sure I want to follow the timeline here. Many of the buildings that are on this site were constructed previous of the adoption of Blueprint Boise. Blueprint Boise comes along and says, we would like to do things differently, including the concept of activity centers. Then this site was slapped with that designation of activity centers, which we have dozens and dozens and dozens of pages dedicated toward what that is to be, right? And the intention of it is to basically shy away from what had been done in the past, which is why it was slapped with a new designation, and specifically away from commercial, which still exists in other parts of our land use code. So I want to make sure I'm just following the timeline, because one of the questions I would have is, in our report, it cites that there are adjacent uses that are similar to this as a reason why we should approve it. However, in our comprehensive plan, it states and it cites that the intention is to go away from those types of uses in activity centers specifically. So I need to understand, how do we justify approving this based on land uses that were put in place prior to the activity center designation, with the intent of the activity center to be something very different as it moves forward?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, the planning staff's analysis of this project was based on compliance with all of the CUP approval criteria. Compliance with the comprehensive plan is obviously one of those. And there are a number of policies that relate to activity centers specifically. Things that encourage, placing buildings towards the street, having ped and bike connections, those types of things, facilitating active transportation, all of that. There are a number of plans that support and don't support any project, including this one. The planning staff's analysis found that it's generally in compliance with the comprehensive plan, but the commission certainly has discretion to interpret that differently.
So to the applicant, in our activity center documentation, I'm just going to read page 2-33. Existing automobile-oriented commercial centers will be revitalized as mixed-use activity centers over time to serve adjacent neighborhoods, increasing housing options and establish a more transit-supportive pattern of growth. Was there at any point in time a thought of going vertical mixed use, or even two different buildings with regard to horizontal mixed use, both of which are specifically attempting in this activity center portion of our plan to be achieved? Is there any discussion about that, putting housing in there, and having Chick-fil-A in the bottom floor, for example? Different model, but it's been done.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, there has been a lot of conversation about all these different options, and genuinely, and I want to kind of address each of them slowly. There was conversation, and again, the owner can probably speak on context of different options prior to us as the applicant. We've explored putting another tenant on the south side, which is where we currently have that kind of designated parking area. It's been a lot of wrestling with ourselves, trying to figure out how do we meet that designation, the land use designation, commercial, and then the actual comprehensive plan. And what we all kept coming back to, including staff, it sounded like, but I don't want to speak for them, was how do we find something where this is an activity center, the whole center, not just this specific parcel or these 3 parcels. And so one of the things in doing that was, okay, well, why don't we break out your parking? Why don't we break out your use so that you don't have that drive-through up in the street? We tried the options of another use, and it didn't pan out. It didn't work out. We are just one applicant as far as, proposing a Chick-fil-A, and specifically related to the activity center use and that sort of designation, like comprehensive plan. We wanted our pathways, our plaza, our biking, our enhanced landscaping, all of it to be a part of what's already existing at the center and thriving. And so that was our goal when working with staff, and it sounded like that met the activity center as a whole requirements for the comprehensive plan.
One of the main tenets of the activity center designation, specifically this one, which is the community type, there's 3 different types, right? But this one has a lot of language around being transit supportive. how does a 32 stall drive-through achieve transit support?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, again, it's hard, going back to the context of the plan, this is almost 3 acres. So while we were originally proposing something larger stack, more parking, we kind of ended up with, you know what, the comprehensive plan seems to really focus on pedestrian access, enhanced landscaping, separating a separate use out potentially in the future on that southern end for being able to put a building in there if a tenant comes up, because obviously as an applicant, we can't control who comes or who doesn't. So we did explore that, and our rationale or explanation for the stacking is we shortened the stacking to be able to meet the traffic expectations so that it wouldn't queue out, to make everyone comfortable, ourselves and also staff, but then leave room for the future for that activity center to continue to flourish as it has been. So hopefully that answers your question.
A couple more, if I may.
Sure.
So in our activity center, the almanac that shows the map of all the community centers, mixed use, I'm sorry, regional, commercial, neighborhood, there's several of them. Warm Springs and Eckert is one that's just like this, right? Overland Vista, State and Collister. Should we presume that those locations could potentially also be subject to an application just like this with this size of a drive-through going through it? I mean, if I guess this is a legacy code, so is there a difference there? But the designation specifically, should we have any anticipation of this type of an application in sites like that?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, as you know, each CUP application is evaluated separately based on the specifics of the site and the proposal of the design. I would note that under the modern zoning code, even in some of those MX zones, drive-throughs are still allowed uses. They just have some more specific design standards. So it is possible that you would see a drive-through application in the future.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Commissioner
Thank you,
Mooney. Yeah.
Commissioner Danley Brigg. So to piggyback on that comment or that thread, so the applications come forward in the case of drive-throughs. In this case, the applicant's got a 30 stack, 34 stack. Is it basically from the city's perspective, the question for staff then is how do we evaluate the quote unquote engineering of a stack? I mean, is it up to, we just trust what the applicant has to say about their service rate, vehicles per hour and all that? Normally, transportation stuff, we're going to rely on a TIS, an engineering document of sorts. So what's our process for these kind of things? Kind of Commissioner Danley's point about other activity centers and drive-throughs in the future.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mooney, I would note that ACHD did comment on this application and didn't express any concern about the increased traffic. Each drive-through use is going to be different depending on what the specific tenant is. So we do tend to rely on the applicant to provide some information based on, other locations in similar markets to determine what that queuing should be.
Thank you. So thanks, Sabrina. So basically, it is the applicant and their market analysis and our trust in they're going to do the right thing for their business and develop the right stack in this case.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, yeah, they usually have the most accurate data that we
Right.
can rely on.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think probably just to note too, that I think we should be careful that we're talking about 2 different codes now too, right? This is legacy code versus the current modern code. And we're also, it's always difficult to think of, this project on a different site, right? So I think we all should be mindful of that, right? That we shouldn't be comparing, we need to compare this project to the code, right? And that's kind of our purview, to the legacy code at that, right? I mean, good questions, but I just don't want us to get off kilter, playing designer from up here.
Mr. Chair, last couple questions
Sure.
for me.
Mhm.
The question about the parking. The map that we're looking at up here in I believe that's the southeast parking area is currently the home of one of the restaurants that is, I think that's the one that's about to no longer be in operation, right? So is it accurate to say that this conditional use permit will ultimately result in more parking at the Spectrum and at this particular part of the Spectrum because of if approved? Because there's the building there now, right? And there's going to be another parking lot, surface parking lot in its place if approved. Is that accurate? Because I want to follow up because I'm hearing a whole lot of different numbers on the actual number of parking stalls as it relates to whether it's in the staff report or what was said in testimony.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, I believe there's approximately 200 parking spaces existing on the site, and with this proposed plan, there would be a total of 171.
Okay, so that's the number 171 that we're adding. We're adding 171 additional surface lots. That's what I'm mixed up on. I want to make sure I'm clear because there's all kinds of language with regard to the Spectrum and how we're counting this. How many stalls are actually being added to the Spectrum parking total because of this application?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, I believe it's actually being reduced by a little bit from what's existing.
So you're saying it's being reduced despite one building completely going away, and we're showing a parking area here.
Yeah. Mr. Commissioner, Chair,
Mhm.
or Mr. Chair, Commissioner.
Please.
The site plan, one of the things that's kind of hard to see, there you go. With this outline right here, it's actually a breakdown of every single stall that's in the entire activity center. One thing that's a little bit hard to tell because there is asphalt replacing in our proposal, there are parking stalls replacing the building. One thing that's not shown is that there's a whole slew of asphalt right now in the southwest corner of the site, right on that rounded kind of pie
Yep, I
shape.
see it.
And that's all being replaced by landscaping,
Okay.
or a majority of it, I should say, in that corner specifically. And then the drive-through lane is also taking up a lot of that asphalt where you'd originally see parking stalls and those types of things. So if you look at the site plan in pieces, the northwest building staying the same, essentially the northeast parking area is staying the same. But then as you move your way south, a lot of those parking stalls get taken up because it's either landscaping, the plaza element that the applicant added, or it's the drive-through lane that is replacing those surface stalls. So you lose about 30 stalls overall in the whole area on this almost 3 acres.
Okay, thank you for clarifying
Yeah,
that. I appreciate it. Okay, that's all I've got. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Hunt.
I got I think a relatively straightforward one. Just looking over the drawings here tonight, looks like you guys are with the retaining wall and landscaping between the drive aisle or the drive-through and the road. You're showing about a 4-foot grade differential there from the sidewalk on Entertainment Avenue to the sidewalk adjacent to the drive-through. Have you guys studied the grades out there? It sure doesn't look like there's 4 feet differential now. So is your intention to raise the site?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I don't believe we've done too in-depth of grading and those types. We have a preliminary grading plan. 4 feet doesn't sound familiar to me, and I apologize wherever that is, and that doesn't sound familiar. But one of the things we've explored in the beginning, working with pre-app and focusing also on, there's going to be a design review aspect to
Right.
this as well,
Right.
is what do we provide? Is the city going to be looking for a block wall? Or are they going to be looking for a retaining wall? A mixture of using the retaining as a block wall in addition to using heavy landscaping. Those are those class 2, class 3 trees. So right now we're more or less intending to use the existing grade, which the site is a little bit higher. So we would kind of like that image shows. But I don't know about 4 feet.
Okay.
It'd probably be
Okay.
closer. Yeah.
I guess to that, and that's where I was going to go with that too, is, and maybe this might be to Sabrina and to eventually to the design review staff, but as you study this, are you open to raising the height of that wall, making it more of a
Absolutely.
screen wall,
Yes.
right? And looking
Yeah,
at all that.
absolutely.
Okay. And then to that
Absolutely.
point too, Sabrina, do we need to make any notes or condition in our approval, or do we just trust our friends in design review to tackle that when it gets there?
Mr. Chair, I think it's at your discretion. If there's a specific height that you would like, you could condition that and the DR team can deal with the specifics of the design.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate
Yes,
that. Thanks, Sabrina.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other questions for anyone? All right. Very good. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Mr.
that.
Chair,
Yep.
Commissioners.
Okay, we'll check in. We'll do public testimony now. First, we'll start with folks in person. If you'd like to testify on this item, this is the time. The podium is free. Any takers? Okay, and it looks like we just have Mr. Berg online. I guess he's probably waiting for the next one, would be my guess. Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and close public testimony then. Very good. Mr. Hunt and team, at this point, it's back to you all for rebuttal. You can certainly yield that time since we didn't have any testimony. Okay, very good. Applicant has yielded his rebuttal time, their rebuttal time. So we'll go ahead and bring this item back before the commission to render a decision. Again, we're discussing CUP 23-56.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Mooney, please.
I move that we approve CUP 2356 with the staff recommended condition of approval for adjustment.
Second.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Doan. Okay, I got a motion to approve by Commissioner Mooney with a second by Commissioner Doan with the amendment to condition number 4 as stated by staff. John, would you like to start some discussion?
Sure.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair, yes, I agree with the staff's recommendation and analysis of the application and take for Council Commissioner Danley's discussion about the drive-through and the auto-centric nature of it in a community activity center. But I think the staff does a good job of describing the other benefits of the application in this drive-through and conditional use. So for that reason, I'm in support of the application.
Great. Okay. Thank you, John. Any other comments or discussion? Commissioner Daly?
What was your hunch? Mr. Chairman, and to my fellow commissioners, I will absolutely not be in support of this motion. I take, I think all of us do, but I take it incredibly important that we defend our comprehensive plan. It is it is our guiding light, so to speak, right? It is our document that has been worked on and updated for the last, 13, 14 years, since I think it was 2008 or so. This is absolutely not in compliance with the comprehensive plan. No way, no how. There's nothing in the activity center write-up in our comprehensive plan that would support this. All of the language in there talks about moving away from this type of a development pattern. It talks about mixed use. It talks about pedestrian and transit oriented. It doesn't talk about a 32Q, and it could be bigger, but we don't even have accurate numbers, to be honest, type of a development that has, or for a drive-through. In terms of satisfying the CUP, adverse impacts, we have an existing business that's going to go out of business because of the drive-through. That's the truth. We have 2 structures that are going to be bulldozed and sent off to the dump. That's not environmental stewardship, which is in our comprehensive plan. We have air quality issues. We have issues in the wintertime with all the stuff that we know with inversions. We have a noise pollution issue that is going to be happening in here. Then we have stacking of vehicles that's going to compound the issue. It's not even just a speaker, right? It's the Idaho Special, the lifted pickup truck that's going to be adding a lot of noise to the adjacent neighborhood. We know that. This isn't transit supportive. This isn't environmentally sustainable. It's not mixed use, and it absolutely takes a step back from what's there, which is 2 structures that bring people together, take them out of their car, have social interaction, all the things that our comp plan seeks us to do, and removes that and puts us back in our car to get something to eat. there are fewer tables on the inside of this proposed structure than there are spaces for cars. That's not in line with our comprehensive plan and blueprint Boise. So respectfully, I can't support this and won't be. So Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
I hear Commissioner Danley and his concerns. We do have a drive-through to the north of this location, the Costa Vida. I'm guilty of using that drive-through once or twice. I agree that our comp plan should be our guiding light, but we also have to, not prioritize, but we also have to look at our code. And, in reading through the staff report, I didn't see anything that really stuck out, noting that this proposal was outside of our code. So for those reasons, I will be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Seha. Yeah, and that was going to be, I agree, that's my point. That was going to be my point as well. And I don't disagree with what Commissioner Danley said, but I also agree with Commissioner Seha that when I look at this and look at the code, I don't see any impacts that would be problematic in my mind. Right now, I tend to look at this entire center as a mixed use development, right? Not just this one use. And I think sometimes we get a little hung up on that maybe context doesn't have a role to play in mixed use, when I think that it certainly does, right? If you already have a mixed use development and you're adding more uses to that mixed use development, you're just increasing the mixed use, right? You don't necessarily have to have mixed use in the new component that's going in. So I think in this instance, when you look at that greater development, we have a mixture of uses. This is adding to that use. And I think also too, I think it's nice to see some redevelopment happening. Now, yes, car-centric, absolutely, right? But it's redevelopment in what's, a little bit older development in the city. And I think we also have to consider the context of adjacent to the interstate as well for people traveling through, right? And we're all guilty of the fast food snack when we're on the highway. So there's definitely all those things that come into play. Not to say that there isn't value in Chris's points, regarding the comprehensive plan and where we want to go, big picture, long term. But when I look at this one specific to this code, again, I don't see anything that throws up a lot of red flags. I appreciate clients' comments. They are heading in for design review next in this process. I would certainly encourage you guys to really study that. The grade differential, the screening of the driveway. We do have some residential further to the west there that's in the vicinity. So I think anything you can do to study the noise and maybe the light pollution from the driveway, that would be beneficial, just to help the cause, right? Yeah, that's kind of it for my comments. I'll be in support of the motion. Is there any other discussion from anybody?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
I've gone
please.
back and forth. I think Commissioner Danley very eloquently argued against it, and I agree with everything he said. But I also agree with the other comments that I don't see anything in the code that prevents this. I do appreciate the attempt to reduce the number of parking spots overall. It is less than we have right now, so that is an improvement in that sense. And also the incorporation of the pedestrian infrastructure on there and the bike parking. Having said that, the drive-through obviously has very negative impacts on all of that as well. So I'm going to reluctantly support the motion, but my preference would be there would be no drive-through here, but I don't feel that I can make that decision. So I'm going to support the motion.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Commissioner Doan?
Yes, I appreciate Commissioner Danley's input on that, but I do agree with there is nothing that I can see within the zoning ordinance that would tell us we can't do this. So I appreciate the conversation.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. You good, Commissioner Daly?
Yep.
Good.
Good. That's
Gotcha. All right. We got a motion to approve CUP 23-56. Again, the motion was by Commissioner Mooney and the second was by Commissioner Doan. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Schaefer,
Yes.
Danley,
No.
Mooney,
Yes.
Seha,
Yes.
Torres,
Yes.
Stone,
Yes.
5 in favor, 1 opposed, motion carries.
Okay. Great. Thanks, everybody. Okay. Okay, well, assuming we're all good to press on to our final item tonight. Looks like it. Okay, we'll move on to item number 4, SUB 24-10 TKM Architecture at 1500 South Chrisway Drive, a preliminary plat for a residential subdivision comprised of 4 buildable lots on 0.37 acres in an R2 zone. This is under the modern zoning code, so a note there. And then just quickly as well, for the record, I'm an employee of the land group, and my company performed the topographic survey of this property for the previous owner a year or so ago. I have no knowledge of this application or put no effort into this current application, but my company's name is included in the record here, so I want to be very upfront about that situation. With that, we'll hear from Jesse Lyle with staff first.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. The item before you is SUB 24-10, which is a preliminary plat for a residential subdivision comprised of 4 lots on 0.37 acres located at 1500 Chrisway Drive in the R2 zone. And as stated, this project was reviewed under the modern zoning code. The applicant proposes to construct 4 duplex-style townhomes in a walkable, bikeable area with nearby bus routes south of the BSU campus. The applicant is proposing to replace the existing 4-foot attached sidewalk with a 5-foot wide attached sidewalk to accommodate for an existing fire hydrant on the northern corner of the parcel. While the development code calls for detached sidewalks for new subdivisions, there is an exception allowed for site constraints on local streets, and the fire department has indicated that this is the best placement for the existing hydrant. Each home will have the 1 required parking space within a garage with guest parking provided in the apron of the shared driveway. Each home will contain 3 bedrooms and 3 1/2 bath with an optional floor plan for an additional bedroom and bathroom. If the applicant chooses to construct the 4-bedroom option with a co-housing use as defined on the screen, an additional conditional use permit will be required for the use to be established with a parking reduction or alternative transportation plan included as a requirement due to the limited on-street parking options available. In conclusion, the planning team recommends approval of the subdivision, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jesse. Next, we'll hear from the applicant. Come on up.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and co-chair, esteemed members of the commission. Appreciate the opportunity to share with you and introduce this exciting project, the Chrisway Townhomes, located on Chrisway Drive. And as a matter of introduction, would like to say that we've designed the Chrisway Townhomes to better utilize what is a relatively large lot in the existing neighborhood. And because it's a large lot and because of the new modern code, we're able to increase the density considerably, much more so than what we are offering as part of this recommendation for approval. And what we would like to do is to separate or to subdivide the parcel into 4 and replace an existing larger single-story house. But we would like to make note that we would like to keep a lot of the aesthetics, a lot of the feel of the neighborhood and a feel of that particular parcel. The way we do that is by, of course, maintaining the trees, the existing mature trees, with the exception of 1. And I would also like to note that we have spent quite a bit of time and energy to communicate with the city to find out from planning and from the planning department with Jesse and several others what they thought would be the best use for this particular site. So as part of the presentation, I'd like to note, is it uncomfortable to look at the pointer from here?
No.
Okay.
And I have to apologize. I didn't quite get your guys' names and address for the
Oh,
record. Just for the folks online mostly. and
Apologize, I
recording.
was on a roll.
Yeah, you were. I didn't want to interrupt.
Taryn Mitchell, TKM Architecture. Address?
Yep, please.
535 Sawtooth Street, Mountain Home, Idaho.
Great. Thank you. Yeah.
And for me, Kevin Hawk, 12044 West Dallin Drive, Boise, Idaho, 83713.
Great.
Sorry, allergies are hitting home.
No, I feel you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Sorry about that. As part of the presentations, I think it's always important to get an overview of the city. And so our first slide shows the greater metropolitan area. And this little red dot right there is the site and its relation to Boise State campus, to the city of Boise and the surrounding area. This graphic shows a little bit closer, and again, how very close the campus of Boise State is. So we're within approximately 600 feet, depending on what buildings you account for. So the greater campus is very, very close. Spoke about the existing site, and this shows the property boundaries and the existing home and the existing driveway in relation to them. Apologize, it shows up fairly light, but we do show the surrounding sizes of the parcels and the homes in that area. I do like to include a few images, so these were taken very recently. So this would be looking towards the east, towards the Boise State campus. You can see the Boise State buildings. And there are annex buildings here, just 2 houses down. This is the intersection of Chrisway and Martha. And this would be looking down, so this would be looking to the west, or excuse me, the southwest. Okay, as that pulls up. The townhomes themselves are designed to be very large. They are approximately 2,100 square feet, 2,100 to 2,200 square feet. And so that makes them very suitable, attached single-family townhomes. I would like to stress that these are townhomes. The term duplex simply means that there are 2 units together. We made a conscious effort to design them as townhomes, but to separate them into 2 buildings. So we didn't have just one block, one mass there abutting the street. And so we believe that would be in keeping with the feel and the context of the neighborhood better. Each townhome that we would like to propose consists of a 2-story structure. It has a single car garage at grade. And there would be a total of 4 townhouses. Each unit would be 3-bedroom, 3-bath, with an option for a 4-bedroom and a 4.5-bath. And that can be seen in the floor plans that we'll see a little bit later. And the last point I'll make before I jump into the site is that there was a pretty considerable amount of, I would say, market study done for the area to find out what would be most marketable, what would be most beneficial. The houses are not, or excuse me, the townhomes are not designed to be co-housing. So the staff was kind enough to bring that to our attention, that there was some concern, and there was additional language in the ordinance, the city code, that said that if they were co-housing, then there would be additional restrictions or requirements as part of this application. And so we do want to make a note that these are not designed to be co-housing. They're designed as single-family townhomes. And so with that, I'll quickly go through the site. And so we do meet all of the requirements of the current city code. The lots themselves range between roughly, what is it? About, well, they're roughly 3,500 to 4,500 gross square feet for each lot. And so as part of the ordinance, we're allowed to go as little as 2,500 square feet, gross square feet per lot. We did not think that would be in the best interest of the community, and that's why we chose to go with larger lots and reduce the number of units. We could have gone more dense and still been in compliance with the city ordinance. So the other item to note is that we do have very sizable backyards. That's in keeping with the context. And so this in the neighborhood, our neighbors you can see here adjacent, and then if we were to zoom out, you could see that the neighbors do have larger rear yards. We thought that would be an excellent use of the space to have both indoor and outdoor spaces, and it would make them more marketable, more desirable for families. We do have covered porches in the back along with patios that we are proposing. We do have an existing canal or drainage ditch who we've been in contact with. We are leaving that intact. We're not touching it. We also have been in communication with Idaho Power. There is an Idaho Power overhead line with a pole more or less in the middle of the site. That pole will remain, but the current overhead power distribution to the building will be replaced with underground, and that does include an existing light pole, street light pole, in the upper right-hand corner near the fire hydrant. Okay, so we believe that in an effort to, again, keep the units and the townhomes manageable and to fit into the context, we would break them into 2 units. And so we thought with this being a transition area near Boise State, that we would modernize a little bit. However, we would be using durable materials, so composite siding. We would have Energy Star or better windows and doors, and we would be using lifetime warranty asphalt roof shingles, and we do have, like I mentioned, covered porches and covered entryways. And so this particular graphic shows our single car garage with a front entry that is visible from the street and really does its part to embrace the street as well as written in the city ordinance. Okay. I think lastly, so I don't make this presentation too long, I'll mention that as part of keeping in harmony with the context, lot coverage, there was no limit on our lot coverage. However, we wanted to keep it down to the greatest extent possible while still best utilizing the site. And so for lots 2 and 3, we're at roughly 33.5% lot coverage. And for lots 1 and 4, we are only at about 27% lot coverage. So the very last item that I will mention is that, again, I'll go back to this initial slide. So here's our site, and here's Boise State. The ordinance, I think, has been very well done to encourage a good use of the land. If there's bike access, are there public transportation routes close by? Are you close to amenities, parks, theater, football stadiums, perhaps? This site itself, I think, is situated really, really well to take advantage of those things. And we think that it really is the best fit for this site, the proposed use. So thank you.
Great. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate that. Okay, I think we've got Mr. Berg online from the Neighborhood Association. Is that right, staff? Shoot, I lost my window.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. Good evening, Eric. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much. Eric Berg, 1301 South Grant Ave, representing the Southeast Neighborhood Association. So we just want to start off this as we support the subdivision. We think this is a reasonable use of this land and a reasonable way to utilize the new code to build the kind of housing that our city needs. But our only concern lies in the 4-bedroom option and the co-housing option. In code, we specifically fought very hard. I hesitate to call it this, but it could almost be called the Cena Amendment in the new code for 4-bedroom duplexes to require 0.75 parking spaces per unit, which would then require 3 parking spaces per unit for each of these townhomes. We feel it is really important that that be upheld, and we applaud the staff for including that in their staff report and in the conditions of approval. The new code was made under the trade that we all understood that increased density was required for our city to continue to thrive, but it also gave the trade of more protection and certainty for the neighborhood. As part of that, that's why it's so important that we uphold that trade and make sure that that condition that the staff is asking for is put into the development agreement and the subdivision. These are effectively, they are townhomes, but the difference between these as 4-bedroom per side townhomes and 4-bedroom per side duplexes is immaterial to how the neighborhood would actually experience them in the lived environment and need to be treated as such. And that's why we don't have any issue whatsoever with this project, subdivision, the proposed building, the mass, all of that. We applaud the developer for, we think, really taking their time and energy of making sure this fits with the environment, fits with the neighborhood, except for the option of 4-bedroom, 4.5 bath. We find that co-housing, and once you get to more than 4 bedrooms or more per side, to be really problematic with both parking and for neighborhood services. I live next to a 4-bedroom per side house. I also live next to some skinny houses that are 3-bedroom, and I can tell you which ones require more parking and require more services in terms of garbage and recycling, etc. So the easiest way to prevent this is just to build a 3-bedroom. And we just really encourage the commissioners to include the staff requirement that if they choose to go the 4-bedroom route, that a diligent and complete evaluation of the conditional use permit be taken at that time. I really want to thank the staff. One of the hardest parts about going from the old zoning code to the new zoning code is, as the changes happen, having the staff really support both the parts that help people increase density and help the neighborhoods in a way that the density will not overwhelm them is so vital. And I think this staff report and the conditions they're asked for are an exemplary example of how to do that correctly. So I just want to make that point and really thank the staff for that and encourage the commission to approve this project with those conditions that a conditional use permit will be required if this turns into a 4-bedroom per side project. And I stand for any questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Berg. We may have some questions for you. Sit tight, hang around. And we'll go ahead and then open it up for questions by the commission at this time.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Torres. Yeah.
my question is for the applicant.
Mhm.
This is a minor thing, but you talked about how it made sense to have the two separate, they're townhomes, but they're two separate buildings to better fit the character of the neighborhood, if I am quoting you correctly. the question I have, and it's not a huge deal, but you mentioned you're going to be using composite materials and all that. It's going to be energy efficient. Obviously, one of the advantages of townhomes is they share walls, and that helps reduce energy usage. It helps retain heat, and et cetera, et cetera. Can you talk more about that decision and why you ultimately chose to do the two buildings beyond what you said already, if that makes sense?
Excellent question. Mr. Chair,
Please.
Mr. Torres, Mr. A lot of thought went, well, as you can imagine, a lot of thought goes into designing buildings, especially buildings like this. When we know that we're in an existing community, an established community, we want to be thoughtful about the materials and about how it's laid out. I think I may be reading between the lines. I do believe that you probably know that it would be less expensive to build one building together. And there are considerable savings in the one building. We opted for two in order to, I would say, better break up the mass itself. We feel pretty confident because of the orientation that we can shield and protect on that western side. Gets really hot on the western sides in the summertime. And because of the kinds of materials that we will be using, we believe we can protect against a greater heat load during the summer. And so that's one of the reasons why I mentioned the materials. We're not using LP siding, which does not do as well as fiber cement siding in the heat. It's far more durable. With the elevations, you can see that we used simulated stone, so a stone veneer, and with a water table, so splashback is a thing, tends to do damage to buildings. And so it really was carefully considered, the kinds of materials and the layout, having two buildings.
Mr. Chair,
Please.
I have a question for the applicant. Affordability isn't a requirement, and I noticed in your application there was no mention on price points, but I was wondering if you could provide some estimate as to what that price point is.
We always get asked this question, and we really do appreciate it. I know that we take affordability seriously. I think this is the gentleman's probably best fitted to answer that question.
Yes, as a proud local business owner and owning a real estate brokerage here, as you guys know, what's going on with our economy with interest rates and supply demand, construction costs, so on and so forth. There is very hard product to be able to comp out with this that is new, that fits what this is looking for to adopt the modern zoning code. So as far as affordability and what we see on this, anywhere in the $250 price per square foot range on these units is kind of what the standard's bringing in this zip code and in this area. So it doesn't, in each of these units are a little different square feet. So with that, we project it to be right around $250 a square foot. The other thing just want to share with that is instead of doing the cluster of 4, what we find out with the 2 shared walls, it can be very loud for residents. So that's why we did break up the building, just have one shared wall with each other to try to have the best experience for the residents that will live in here.
Thank you.
Jesse, to Mr. Berg's testimony, which I appreciated and was very thorough and clear. Do we feel, I think condition number 2 is regarding the co-housing. Do we feel like there's anything that needs to be added to or amended? Is that condition clear from the city side about expectations should the applicant move to that 4-bedroom or co-housing option?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, that condition was added after multiple conversations with the applicant concerning neighborhood concerns that have come up in the past, the intent of the modern zoning code, and the impacts of these co-housing uses within the BSU and surrounding neighborhoods. So I think that that condition does outline what the definition of co-housing is and what would be required if the applicant would choose to pursue that use.
Okay, great. And
However,
gentlemen, you guys are in agreement with that summary?
Yes,
Okay,
we are.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Mooney.
But I'm confused about that a bit. So if the applicant sticks with a 4-bedroom, 4.5 bath, and not co-housing, then everything's fine. And that's kind of how it's laid out, not right now, correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, so the challenge here is really trying to define the use before the product is built. If this is a single family home and it truly is utilized as a single family home and not as a co-housing use, then those conditions would not apply, would not need a conditional use permit. However, if it was to meet the definition of co-housing, it would require a conditional use permit.
So follow, Mr. Chair. So that's where I'm confused is what would trigger that change in status to co-housing?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, the definition of co-housing is on the screen. So it's a building that contains 4 or more individual bedrooms. Each bedroom is designed for occupancy by 1 or 2 individuals with individual occupancy agreements or leases. So that is where that additional bathroom attached to each bedroom and the shared kitchen facilities could go into that co-housing use.
So, Mr. Chair, so the way this, if it went to a co-housing, the way that would be reported is either the owner of that 4-bedroom unit would admit that it's now leasing separately, or it'd be a code compliance complaint from the neighborhood. Is that what would transpire?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, yes, anyone who is using this as a co-housing use would be required to get a conditional use permit. Again, with a lot of the conversations had with the applicant, this is something that has been very clearly communicated that use would necessitate a conditional use permit. However, if that was to not happen, then it would be a code compliance issue at that point in time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Saya, please.
I just was giving some thought to Mr. Mooney's comment. So having gone to Boise State, having lived on campus, off Martha Street, off Belmont, and off, I don't know what other street, blocks away from Boise State, 20 some years ago, the neighborhood has changed. There's a lot more co-housing that is occurring within the immediate area of Boise State. That I have a hard, I mean, and you know, maybe this is outside of our scope here, but someone who purchases one of these townhomes may not be familiar with our co-housing definition and their requirements. So is the developer going to inform potential buyers? Okay.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Commissioner, the ownership group feels so strongly of not having this as co-housing that we're willing to make that a condition of approval to not have co-housing on there.
So to that question, then to staff, if we eliminate the 4th bedroom option, so the city's view that we eliminate that, then that eliminates this co-housing issue altogether.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, the co-housing use is defined as having 4 or more individual bedrooms. If the homes did not have that 4th bedroom, it could not be considered co-housing by definition. So I guess that's
okay.
Best I can do.
We're
Mr.
wading into
Chairman.
new code territory here, so we're all learning.
Yep. No
Or getting refreshers after a year break
Uh,
from reviewing the code when we passed it.
Mr. Chair, another thing to share just as far as marketability for these, as we were talking earlier, as far as what these price points look like for this product. Another thing that we see from consumers, especially coming into the 8370 zip code, is they like to have a 4-bedroom option, especially in this more modern work from home world and a hybrid place where you do have an office, married couple with a kiddo, grandparent comes and stays, aunt, uncle, what it may be. What we typically see in this and from a brokerage side when we represent our buyers and purchasing the Craig property is that 4th bedroom option to have it as a work from home office, be able to have family come in town, or have it as the, playroom for the kiddos. And more often than not, what we see from the consumer that's coming into the Treasure Valley is it's utilized in that reason, to be able to have extra space and have that 4th bedroom there, whether it's utilized as a bedroom, but having it as a flex space, especially with the modern work from home hybrid lifestyle that we have now.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may add. as
Yeah,
well.
please. Sure.
To piggyback on what Mr. Hawk has mentioned is that we feel strongly the 4th bedroom option is really necessary for the marketability, for the success of the project. And here's why. So in the immediate neighborhood of the 21 surrounding residences that are there in and around Chrisway, so we've got one university dormitory, 3 university buildings. One residence has 5 bedrooms. 10 other residences have 4 bedrooms. They're close by. So there is a concern that the marketability of these units will be diminished because there are houses in the immediate area that would be bigger or would provide more bedrooms.
Mr. Chair, I have a follow up on that. So I'm thinking of a couple places off Chrisway. I think we have some fraternities on Chrisway, closer to Boise Ave.
Very well could there, or
We
Belmont,
do.
off the top of my head, yeah.
We do. Sorry, I went to school there and I'm very familiar with the neighborhood. But and so I can see where there are more rooms in those particular housing developments. Yeah.
Do you have a question? Or?
I just wanted to note that based on your information, you may have homes that have 4 bedrooms, but some of those, especially closer to Boise Ave, are co-housing establishments.
Sure.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? Final call. Okay, very good. All right, thanks, gentlemen. Okay. We'll go ahead and open up public testimony on this. Okay, we did have Mr. Limbert signed up. Mr. Limbert, come on up. Podium is free. As you testify tonight, you start with your name and address. That was.
What's that? I didn't hear you.
You can start with your name and address, please, and then everyone's given 3 minutes to
My
testify.
name is Robert Limbert. My address is 1615 Chrisway. I live on Chrisway Street. It's already overcrowded. Parking is horrible. Traffic is bad. The area is being turned into a BSU ghetto. And more people will be more trouble. I've had my cars broken into, have stuff stolen out of my front yard and out of my carport. They bring more people in, it's going to be nothing but more hassle. I'm against this. It used to be a fairly nice neighborhood, not anymore. This will just make it worse. And by the
Okay.
way, can you turn up your mic so I can hear you back there?
Sure, we can absolutely do that. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Limbert. Appreciate that.
All right, you have a good one.
You too. Okay. Yep, please come on up. Podium is free.
Hi, my name is Megan Borkowski. I'm speaking on behalf of the family.
You can pull that mic down a little closer. There you go.
I'm speaking on behalf of the Brawler Family Trust, which owns the home at 1512 Chrisway, which is located just to the south side of the proposal. It is my understanding,
And we have been there since 1987.
it is my understanding that no one has brought up BSU's 20-year plan, which is to completely encompass that neighborhood. They own Juanita behind us. They own a street on Martha Circle, and they own everything on the other side of Martha Street. At this time, on the side we live on, there are 3 homes, single-family homes. The rest of them are all full of frat and sorority students' housing. The house that they're talking about demolishing has had 3 different owners in the last few years, all renting it as multi-use. So it's been full with 3+ tenants at every time. They don't have enough parking. Just to use their photo earlier from the street, you can see the street is full. You can only park on one side. The other side is no parking. So, I see parking as a huge issue. If you have 3 to 4 bedrooms, even if you rent it as, or have someone buy it as a single family use in the area where it's at with its proximity to BSU, it's going to be used as student housing. Student housing will have at least 1 person in each room with their own car. And there's nowhere to park that car. Again, I referenced BSU's 20-year expansion plan, unless it's changed, which they own everything around it. The real estate's going to be worth nothing anyway in a short amount of time. As our neighbor has mentioned, it is Greek Row now, and you don't have a single house that has a family in it. So my mother has her house. The lady next to her is a retired BSU professor, and a gentleman on the other side. The one that just spoke lives across the street and down by Boise Avenue with his mother. They're the only people that are not college students living on the street this time. He talks about having 5+ bedrooms or 4+ bedrooms per house. It's because they're being rented to BSU students. So we have some serious concerns. My father just passed away in February, and so I spent a month sleeping at my parents' house. And there were parties until 2 a.m. So every night the street was full and it was loud and it was busy. And there are bonfires across the street. We've had to call the fire department a number of times to come and have them extinguished. He mentioned the break-ins. So I have no problem with the housing. I think it's great if we have more housing because we do need it. But I'd like a family to live there who wouldn't need 4 parking spaces per unit. And we don't have any families that are buying in that area because of the students and the BSU expansion plan. Do you want to add anything?
Yes. I'm Jeannie Brawlier. My parents, we've had the house since 1987.
Time.
We'll just carry on. We'll just start her
Do a
time. She
second.
started a little early.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'm just doing a little bit of the administrative stuff here.
Yes, you can start a new one, but please with your name first.
Jeannie Brawlier.
Thank you.
So I have lived there, or we have owned it since 1987. There has been a lot of changes. Again, I'm a all 5 of us daughters were BSU students. My father was a mail boy in that area. He died in February. And so we have a lot of ties to the area. The housing would be great. There is no way it is going to be bought by a single family with kids. No way. All of us girls have raised our families in and out of this house because my parents live there. The grandkids there are 10 of them, have been in this neighborhood growing up and seen things and experienced things that no one is going to come and raise a family there anymore. I mean, it's not conducive to that in any way, shape, or form. Again, it is going to be, you're silly if you think that someone's going to buy that house and not rent it to college kids. That's how it's going to be. And BSU has come and talked to my parents several times about their 20-year plan. And it's more like a 10-year now. So if you're going to sell this house to someone, are you going to tell them it is going to be absorbed into Boise State within the next 10 to 15 years? So all of that, and the number one thing again is the parking. The side of the street that the house is on is all no parking. However, with the 4 girls that live there and are just moving out right now, I would say every day of the week, they have someone illegally parked in front of that house. They illegally park in front of my parents' house. If it was my way, I'd be calling the police constantly. My mother's much nicer. It's ridiculous. So that's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. think that might, we're good on testimony? Okay, great. Thank you, ladies. Thank you, Mr. Limbert. I don't believe we have anyone online. Okay, we'll go ahead and close public testimony, and we'll bring this back for rebuttal by you gentlemen. Typically, we do 5 minutes for rebuttal. Is that going to be adequate? Cool.
Just a couple of things I want to share. As a local born and raised developer, we actually work with Boise State with graduate programs, their faculty and student athlete housing. We're currently building them a sports village in Garden City. And the reason why I share that is because if this site was intended for co-housing, we would have pressed the button for more density. With having the ability to go to 4 stories and having more than double the units that we are proposing on this site, our intention is to not have co-housing with this and to be able to have this for sale product to the individual owner occupy. We feel so strong about that I actually was born and raised not too far from the site in this neighborhood, and families that are seeking that type of lifestyle to be able to be near a college, be able to hit Boise Avenue, go any which way to hit Capitol, utilize the river, downtown amenities. We wholeheartedly believe that this is driven towards the owner occupy family of having that. Additionally, with co-housing, we are the property manager of this site. Right now, definition of co-housing is individual leases. We've been managing this site since 2021. We've never had individual leases on the site. It's all collective of one lease agreement. At the end of the day, as a property manager, our hands are tied behind our back and we cannot dictate per fair housing laws of who applies for units and who's accepted as long as they hit the requirements in order to be approved for that site. So with that, there has never been co-housing on the site. Our intentions are not to bring in co-housing, and we show that in good faith with our application by providing a 2-story product that looks very similar to the remaining the remaining houses that are on the street moving forward. Last thing I want to share, just to talk about what Boise State brings to our community and the housing that's around it. A reference was the BSU ghetto in this area. Born and raised here, youngest of 6. I've never heard that term in my life as far as what this is for Boise State and their housing. The other thing I want to share is Boise State's a growing, thriving college. If anything, as a community, we want to back that. That brings in fresh energy, fresh people. These people stay here for work. We see it on the front lines as a brokerage that when the individuals come, their families come with them as well. They're getting out of places that aren't as nice and beautiful as Boise, and we want to keep that trend going by offering owner-occupied housing on this site.
Okay. Very good. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, that does it for the hearing. We'll go ahead and bring this item back before the commission. Again, this is SUB 24-10. Staff, just as a reminder, since we're now in modern zoning code, we're still recommending to council.
Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Thank you. Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Mooney, yeah. Please.
I move that we recommend approval of sub 2410 based with the terms and conditions as stated in the staff report.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Torres. I have a motion to approve by Commissioner Mooney with a second by Commissioner Torres. John, want to kick us off on discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Obviously, a difficult dynamic plays out in these student housing zones, and I'm sensitive to both sides of the argument, but I'm also highly sensitive to property rights and fair housing laws. And the applicant can attract with his product families, he could attract students, he could attract all kinds of buyers, and we up here in the city can't dictate who those buyers are. That's just the way America works. And so that's the bottom line of my feelings on this application.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, John. Any other comments, discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Commissioner Torres, yeah.
seconding what Commissioner Mooney said, I would also just add, I mean, we need more housing in the Treasure Valley. We need more housing in Boise. This trades one single family home for four. It makes good use of the new code, which I think is what the city intended when they passed that code. And I'm going to support the motion, obviously, since I seconded it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Torres. Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Seah.
I am going to support the motion. This is, our new zoning code allows this. I hear the neighbors' frustration. We are bringing 4 new homes in rather than 1. But to Commissioner Mooney's point, we can't tell the developer who and what, but $500,000 home really does kind of set parameters for who can afford to reside in that home. And as I mentioned previously, having attended school at Boise State and still spend some time near the university campus, I see a lot more co-housing happening in that vicinity than 20 years ago. And I don't think it's changing. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Seha. I will second and third the comments ahead of me here. Instead of this is the new code, I will be in support of the motion. This is the new code, and we are getting 4 houses instead of 1, and we're also getting 4 houses instead of 8, right? So I think I do want to recognize the applicant for being thoughtful with the approach taken with this project, and getting the additional housing included into the neighborhood at what I think was in a reasonable approach as far as the lot coverage of the buildings, the building height. We've seen applications in the past asking for reduced setbacks, and none of that came, that didn't come through on this one, right? They're meeting the code requirements for setbacks. Building heights are reasonable, especially in relation to the existing buildings in the neighborhood. It does just get back to the question of the number of people living in the structures, right? And parking is always the issue, especially in a zone like this where we're adjacent to a major use like the university. So we see this a lot, and this is sort of the first of many to come, where we're going to understand exactly how this new code is applied and where we're running into issues, right? And I think that this is like I said, this is the first one that we're going to see that, right? But again, I think the applicant did a nice job of being thoughtful in their approach, right? And trying to find a right balance between growth, but not overdoing it, right? So I grew up in Boise. I've driven through this neighborhood, my entire life, and I understand the growth and the challenges and the changes that are happening. And I think our job sometimes is not fun when we're dealing with situations like this, where we have, smaller homes or longtime residents, and growth is encroaching and it creates a difficult situation. But I see nothing in the code that should tell us no to this application. So appreciate all the testimony, understand your concerns. I would continue to talk to the city and to ACHD, when you see issues. And again, to you gentlemen, I appreciate the approach and your thoughtfulness, with this application. So that's my commentary. Unless there's any other final thoughts, I'll go ahead and call the roll. Okay. All right. Again, we have motion to approve by Commissioner Mooney, with a second by Commissioner Torres. This is again, SUB 24-10. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Schaefer,
Yes.
Danley,
Aye.
Mooney,
Yes.
Seha,
Yes.
Torres,
Yes.
Dome,
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Okay. That concludes our business this evening. We are adjourned.